Hey BookTube, I'm back for another video. This is going to be my top 10 favorites of 2025. Uh, and this is my favorite video to make of the year because I love reflecting on a year of reading. And this year has got to be, hands down, the best reading year I've had since I've been reading. And I've been reading since I was, I don't know, grade 3, grade 4. And it's not like I've been tracking my reading when I was a young kid or anything, but ever since I've been tracking my reading, since around maybe 2020, 2021, something like that, this has been hands down my best year of reading, not just in terms of volume, but in terms of quality. And that was partially intentional because I got to reading a lot of the books that I thought I would like, uh, and um, and some of them I did, some of them I had mixed feelings about, and others I didn't care for. And so this video will be specifically focused on my favorites. I'm going to be doing a video on my least favorites and explaining why, and then I'll be doing a tag video on, I think Triumphal Reads is the one who came up with a tag about the end of the year tag with a bunch of questions about your reading for the year. And then I might do a video on a book stats. Right off the hop, I'll say I read 57 books this year, which is way more than I've usually read. Usually my total is around 40-ish. Um, not saying I couldn't read more, but I have a thing for chunky books, and I'm a slow reader. So, and also my reading year tends to get wonky when school gets rolling. So. But anyways, I'm going to go through 7 honorable mentions, and then I'm going to get to my top 10. So my first honorable mention is the only book that that I read in 2025 that was actually published in 2025. And it's a self-published book, and it's a book that I pre-ordered, and I read right away basically when it came out. And it's a book that has stuck with me, and a book that was very enjoyable, but also a deeply weird book, and I'm going to show you it now. It's Cuba Fruit by Alexander Serrando. Cuba Fruit by Alexander Serrando. I don't have a cover that I can show you other than the Amazon page, but it is a thriller novel, and here we go. It is a thriller, at least a thriller premise. It's based, the whole premise is centered around a biographer who is doing a multi-volume biography of a vice president figure who, all of the figures are fictional, but it plays into his role in the running of a foreign country in the Caribbean area, and it has to do with the totalitarian regime in that country. And the genius in this book is that he creates a fictional country, creates a fictional fruit, hence the title of the name, and the fruit has certain particular abilities. It's the main attraction or export of this Caribbean country. And there's a little touch of magical realism in here as well, but and the premise of the novel is fascinating. It's this biographer who is writing this biography of this American vice president figure, who's also a fictional character, but based very much on a real figure. It's where one of the natives of this country tracks him down and is pointing a gun at him from long range, and he gets a phone call, and he has to stand in the middle of this public square with a sniper rifle pointed at him. He can't see her, or doesn't know where she is, but she's talking to him, and she wants him to talk to the news interview that he's going to be doing on the phone in a matter of an hour or two, and to expose the truth of what he's actually writing about the harmful effects that the man he's writing the biography of, how that has affected the people of this land. I don't remember the country off the top of my head, the name that he gives this land. All I know that is that it's very well realized, and it's very strangely written, but in a way that's very compelling. It's like it's almost like a movie script, like stop and start, kind of stuttery, but yet not it doesn't get in the way of your enjoyment of the reading or the flow of the novel at all. It's hard to explain, but it's very well done, and it's a book that I do recommend if you're interested in any kind of thriller novel. There's a lot more to it than I can say here, but I did read this back in February, so my knowledge of the book might be a bit iffy, but it's still a very good read, and I do recommend it. Let's go to my next honorable mention here. The next honorable mention is a book I read on my e-reader. A book on my e-reader. I read Startide Rising by David Brin. This is a science fiction novel, and I seriously wish I read this sooner because this was a terrific read. I did have some problems with it, especially the ending. I know this book runs off into multiple series, but the ending, I felt, left a lot of loose threads open that I thought would be concluded, and I thought if they were concluded well, that this book would certainly be on my top 10, but even without that, it made my top 10, and it showed me that I don't need to be fully immersed in the world of science fiction in order to pick up a science fiction novel and get it. My understanding of science fiction before I read this, I've read some science fiction writers before, and Ray Bradbury I consider one of my favorite novelists, or fiction writers, but books like this that were longer and it seemed like to me I would need to be a science fiction fan in order to pick up and read them, just because it assumes that you're interested in the trappings of science fiction and that you're going to be willing to put in the effort to I don't know how to explain it, to put in the effort to just roll with whatever the author is doing. That's the best way I can explain it. I thought the author was going to just start off with this space drama and leave me behind real quick if I didn't try to keep up. And the author did not. I mean, I can see people reading this and maybe feeling that, but the author is skilled enough that if you do put in some effort, that you're going to get amply rewarded. It's a very well realized novel of this whole galaxy world of different species of alien creatures, including humans, who are in part of this galactic organization, and where your position is based on how old your species is. Some of them are millions and millions of years old, and based on how you uplift other species. So if there's species that are have sufficiently complex brains in which they can get helpful technological and biological assistance from another intelligent species, that can uplift them into conscious thinking. And humans have done that to dolphins, hence the cover here, and to apes, or to chimpanzees, not apes. Chimpanzees, and so chimpanzees and apes can talk, though for dolphins, they speak a different language. They don't speak English, but they speak a kind of like a cross between English and dolphin, and that's how humans and dolphins communicate. And it's a very well done novel, because it follows the very first space exploration ship that is run by dolphins as they go on an expedition, or as they are being chased. And it's very well done how it kind of throws you into the action. So the ship has almost crash landed on this ocean planet, foreign ocean planet, and they're being chased by all these different, much more powerful and more ancient races because this ship has made an accidental discovery that could shift the entire power structure in the galaxy, and this is a big deal because humans are almost scoffed at in this galaxy because of how young they are compared to the other species, and they're not really treated well. So the balance of power is very thin to begin with. Uh, but it throws you into this world, and you learn about this world and about the characters on the ship, and about the relationship between humans and dolphins and chimpanzees, and of uplifting, and it's a whole world in this novel, in the midst of this action sequence, and it's very well done, and I thought it was well worth an honorable mention. Next, another honorable mention is a work of nonfiction. It's The Constitution of Knowledge, A Defense of Truth by Jonathan Rauch. The reason why this is an honorable mention and not on my top 10, even though I really, really enjoyed this, is mostly my fault. It's because I read this slowly, and that was the wrong thing to do because a lot of the arguments sort of faded in my knowledge. It's hard to give a full summary of this book because of that. I just know that I was thrilled when reading it, and mainly this book is about Jonathan Rauch's own take on what a liberal democratic society should look like, and how knowledge should be is a communal thing. Individually. He's a very jarring chapter in here where he goes over the individual flaws that we have in terms of biases and confirmation bias and all these kinds of intellectual pitfalls that we can fall into that make it difficult to trust our own opinions and the rationality of our own preconceptions, I guess. And it can be almost depressing, that chapter, but then he goes on to explain how knowledge and objectivity and scientific inquiry have to be based on a communal basis of communal inquiry, and based on what he calls the reality-based community, where we agree to these rules of how to find truth, how to find knowledge, and we use this, and we use the strength of numbers to make important discoveries of truthful discoveries, and to make useful discoveries, and also how to sustain freedom of thought, which is a big key for Jonathan Rauch. It's a very well done book. It's just that there's a lot to chew on here, and I find myself blanking on some of the main arguments here. I couldn't really reproduce the full arguments here, but it's very very smart, and I do think it's well worth being an honorable mention. Next is another novel. It's a fantasy novel this time. It's one of those novels that I had been meaning to read for a while, and I'm glad I finally got to it. And I'm just pulling up the cover here on my e-reader. It is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. I love that cover there. And it's a fairly short work. A short work of fantasy, and there's no main seven books, no main 7-book series in this world. It's just this book, and then maybe I think 2 other short stories that he wrote in this world. And this main book is really, really strange, and strange in a good way. It's about this fantasy world, kind of like a medieval fantasy world, traditional fantasy stuff, but it follows this unicorn, and she lives in the forest, and she's getting hints that maybe she's the last unicorn in the world, and she's confused by that. Unicorns are very individual creatures. They don't live together, and they live far apart, but they live in comfort that other unicorns exist. And this unicorn is being told that all the unicorns have been rounded up and brought away. And so she goes looking for this unicorn, and she encounters a failed magician along the way, and a couple of other characters, and it leads to an end, like an ending sequence that I thought was very well done. And most of all, the surprising thing is that that summary sounds very trivial, but the book is far from it. It's the type of book that you could read to a kid, and they would get a lot from it. They would enjoy it, but you could also read it to an adult, or you can enjoy it and appreciate it as an adult, because it's a fairly dark book at times and a very serious book, and yet it plays with normal fantasy themes, and it's just a very provocative book in my mind, at least, because of that that darkness mixed with childlike symbols and you know and it's hard to say what else without spoiling the book, but it is a very clever book, so I really enjoyed it. Next is another fantasy book. I read more fantasy than I used to, or than I usually do. And the next fantasy book that I read, here, just pulling up the cover on my e-reader, which really likes to take its time sometimes. And I read the first 4 books in the Earthsea series by Ursula K. Le Guin, but the book here that makes it onto my honorable mentions is the very first one. It's The Wizard of Earthsea, and I think she wrote this in like 1970. It's technically a kid's book, much more kid's book than say The Last Unicorn. The Last Unicorn is not technically meant to be a kid's book. This one is, especially this series as a whole. And I really like that first book. The first book is the strongest book so far I've read in the series. There's 6 books in this series, and I read the first 4, and I thought they got progressively worse, not in terms of writing quality, because Ursula K. Le Guin is a really good writer, and she will pull you along no matter what the story is. But the first book, I think, had the most heart to it, and the most pure, enjoyable character arc. She introduces us to this one character in this world of Earthsea, and his training to become a wizard, and it's already prophesied on the first page that he will become the greatest wizard of his time, and it's basically the process of how he becomes that, and how he has to go through this process of chasing his shadow, because he played with magic in a dangerous way, and it ripped a hole in the world, and he has to repair it somehow, and it's a very good book, and I really did enjoy it, but it didn't quite make my main list. I'm spending a lot of time on my honorable mentions here. I'll try to go a little bit quicker. The next book is definitely not fantasy, though maybe it's more science, or, well, I don't know. Maybe it is like a very old version of fantasy, but it's Tarzan of the Apes by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I read this on a whim. I watched the movie, the animated movie, the Disney version, and I figured I would read the book. And the book is very short, it's like 200 pages, and it's just a fantastic, thrilling read of this Englishman who, as a baby, is stranded in the jungle in Africa, and he's raised by this herd of great apes, and it's about how he tries to go about proving himself to these great apes, that despite him being like a naked ape without the hair and the jaw strength and even the physical strength, he has to use his characteristically human advantages, like intelligence, for example, and his ability to make tools in order to become the leader of his tribe. But then he's also discovered by other Englishmen, and it's about his conflict between, does he stay in his traditional world, the world that he's ever known, or does he go into human society, a world very foreign to him, but very attractive to him, specifically because there's a particular woman he wants to impress. And it's the ending was also terrific, but also surprisingly heartbreaking, and it directly leads into sequels. There's probably, I don't know, 10 other, maybe more other books in this series. I only read the first one, and I don't suspect I'll go and read any further, because I hear they get pretty fantastical. But this first book sounded very the reason why I love this book is, one, because the writing is no Shakespeare or anything, but the writing is perfectly capable of sweeping you away. And so the story was just fantastically done. But then number two was also that this almost seems like it could happen in real life. Like, maybe you can imagine this child getting lost in the jungle, or being left in the jungle and then raised by apes and then becoming basically superhuman in strength. And it's just really cool to think about. But yeah, it was very well done, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have two more books. The next one here, the next two I don't have any examples I can show you of, no covers. But another example, or another honorable mention, is Lost Connections by Johann Hari. And the trappings of it is a typical self-help book. It's a book on depression, and the trappings, I don't remember the subtitle, but I know the subtitle is very hokey in its invocation of traditional, self-help books. But this book is not actually a self-help book. It's more of a journalistic exploration on the subject of depression, and I thought that was very refreshing. But also it led him to different conclusions that you normally get from what you would consider a self-help book. So, for example, he spends the first few chapters questioning antidepressants. Antidepressants are a huge industry, pharmaceutical industry, and so many people use them. And he questions whether or not we should be turning to pills for our answers of while we feel depressed. And he spends the rest of the book going over, I think, 7 or 8 problems that contribute to one's depression, and then he gives 7 or 8 ways out of these problems, or at least gives examples or tells stories of people who have gotten out of these problems, and how it has worked for them. And I thought it was very, very intelligent, very well done. I'm a big fan of that book, and it made me want to read more of his books. He's got a book on the war on drugs, called Primal Screams. He's got a book on attention spans, and he's got a book. His most recent book is on Ozempic, the weight loss drug, which I believe he does take, but he has a very nuanced and scientific take on these drugs, and he's a very engaging writer, but he's also a very smart thinker and very honest, but he's also very nuanced, and it's very, very unusual for a self-help book to have that kind of nuance, because he's a journalist and he's going all over the world conducting interviews with experts on these issues. And what he doesn't tell you in the book is that he probably did twice the amount of interviews that he actually includes in his books. So I do think that was a fantastic read, and it's definitely a book I've been thinking about. And then the last honorable mention is Notre Dame de Paris by Victor Hugo, one of the few books I read it from the 19th century. in this year, which is unusual. Usually my volume is a lot higher than that. But it was a book that I had been wanting to read for a while. I hadn't read much French literature other than, say, Proust and I think one Flaubert novel. And so I thought I'd read another major French author, and Victor Hugo was the author. And I read Notre Dame de Paris, and at first I didn't like it. I didn't like the beginning. The beginning it was very much off-putting because he was including a lot of references to characters that I don't know. Like, I'm not French. I don't know these characters or the historical basis of some of the things that he was exploring in those first few chapters. Because the book is a work of historical fiction, I'm sure many of you have seen at least a Disney film, or at least aware of the story under the title The Hunchback of Notre Dame. But Notre Dame de Paris was the translation of the book that I read, which was for the Oxford World Classics. I don't know who the translator is off the top of my head, but I've heard that it was a really good translation. But the novel itself, like, once I got into it, like, it was just whips you along, and it's just terrific with its characters. Esmeralda is definitely one of the highlights of the book. Just her as a character. One of the things that you don't get, especially from the Disney movie, is that she's actually 16 years old. Like, she's very young, but she's a very compelling character, and she falls in love with a captain who basically saves her at one point, but yet he's not worth her attention because he's very much of licentious kind of man, and so at one point he tries to seduce her, but then we also have Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, who lives and breathes the atmosphere of the church of Notre Dame and in Paris. And the church itself is very much a character on its own, but there's just terrific set pieces in there. The ending is tragic but very fitting, I think, and it's just a terrific book all around, and I really did enjoy it. So now we get on to my actual top 10. 27 minutes into this, now we're at my top 10. Maybe should I do my top 10 in its own video, or should I continue? I'm thinking that's what I might do. Do my top 10 in another video. So I'll leave that for now, and we'll see you in my top 10 video, which I'm going to record right after this.